Christopher, hey, congratulations on your short film, Trammel.
Thank you.
So, how does it feel that your short film's being showcased at Slamdance?
Um, Great. It's a festival that I've wanted to be a part of for a really long time. Um, I like the attitude of it, the general attitude and the makeup of it being like it is organized by filmmakers who were previously in it. Um, it just has a general like punk DIY attitude. Um, so it's a really good thing, and I'm happy to finally be part of it.
Yeah, it is such a great indie setting, especially over there during this month. So let's talk about your film a bit here. Where did the original story came from for Trammel?
hmm Um, I had the idea for it a long time ago. I grew up with my grandparents, so my grandpa was retired when I was like adolescent, teen, and he just didn't really have anything to do. So he was going to the store every day, and I realized he was doing it because it was a hobby. He would see people and you know have conversations with them. And as I got older, I reflected more on that, and it was just like the supermarket was a community center um, in an area in a time when we don't really have that anymore. There's all these uh, private businesses, chains that end up becoming de facto community places. So I started to think more about that and more about the idea of like someone who was really had nothing else, and that's all they had. And what happens in the way that a lot of non-public places, private businesses and such, they can disappear. They can easily be like, well, there's no profit, or it's not worth us being here. So like when there's not a community center that's just there because it's good to have, like what happens when it just up and disappears? So I started to think about that, and it was kind of percolating a long time, and eventually, like I met the lead character Dale, so I slotted him in, and we found a location that was different from the kind of supermarket thing, which was part of the original idea, and it just kept evolving, and here we are.
I was actually fascinated by the character Dale there, and the conversation topics he actually, brought up. Could you talk
Mhm.
about how you came up with those subjects to talk about in your short film?
Sure. Dale loves to talk. He loves to gab. It's very much him, he didn't stray too far from who he is as a person, um, which made me, realize, oh, he's perfect for this idea. So what we did was I had a one-on-one with him, and then I got him and Mohammad together, and I basically knew what I wanted to do as I explained, where it's just like this person opens up to an employee and the employee disappears. Like you have the general framing of that. So Dale can talk about anything. So all I did was like, I thought of the most random topics I could, just words. Literally, Dale, talk about mustard, And, you say that to anybody and they're just like, what are you talking about? But Dale's the kind of person who would do that and then immediately go into mustard, talk about that. So I tried to think of all of these different things that I could, just a list. And I ended up choosing the best ones where it was just like, okay, zoo. So then he has this really funny story about the zoo, and it's like, okay, we can use that. Um, and then it's like talk about work. So he talks about the sperm tank and like that's really interesting. And then you know he's going to talk about his his parents. So it's just like, okay, well, you know, it's funny, but technically like sperm, it connects. So you start to find all these things, just like which ones are really entertaining, which ones are like um, interestingly revealing or personal, which ones have layers to them and connect to the others. So it's fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of like time just spent like listening, that kind of thing. Um, but we ended up being able to narrow it down of just like what are the most intense, you know, what are the most humorous,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
So was there a particular script, or you just basically let Dale improv as much as he can?
It was a treatment. Um, and so I had the treatment, and it was basically like we start off with a an innocuous topic, something that's, you know, funny or whatever, and then you keep going down the list where he starts to open up more. So it's less just like here's a silly story, um, that kind of thing, till it gets like super personal, super serious. So we had that general treatment. And then once I got the topics, we selected those and started like, it would be like one or two things per, let's say, bullet point of just like, here's the funny one, here's the less funny one, more serious, that kind of thing. Um, so to answer your question, it was both. It was just like we planned around everything and then just kind of set Dale free. So he did a lot of improv. But it was interesting because when we were shooting, it's like we kind of knew what he was going to touch upon, but it was also up to Mohammad to direct within the scene and kind of just be like, push back or do this or do that to kind of keep things on track or turn it a certain way. Um, so yeah, we were, I mean, by that kind of idea, we were always kind of, it always felt like we were writing, like at every stage where it's just like, oh, okay, you know, like in the editing, what part do we choose? And that, does that mess up like the other, you know, part of the conversation later, that kind of thing.
So when you actually picked Mohammed to play, the store clerk pharmacist, on the other side of the table, you just basically instructed him just to react to Dale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't want him to uh, reveal too much, talk too much about himself, and relate to him, because I saw it more as a one-sided kind of thing and ends up becoming like sort of confession boothy. Um, so I didn't want it to be like that, not in a cruel way where it's like Dale is using him, but Muhammad is there for him when nobody else is. So he's kind of responding to that. And also just like in real life, you know, when you do service work like that and you're performing care work where you're just like, you are, you know, you're bonding with someone, but you're not revealing too much of yourself because like you still have an entire shift, you know, and you might see this person a lot, and you might get those kind of characters like every day, like a bunch of different people. So it kind of made sense for him to be in that mindset of a worker who's like making small talk. Um, Things get personal, you know, he's not opening up too much. But I knew he could do it. I knew he can kind of like keep things going without like taking over a conversation or, you know, that kind of thing.
This wasn't the first time you worked with Muhammad, right?
No, Mohammed, I've worked with many times. He was in my first feature, The Winds That Scatter, and he really helped a lot with that. He acted in it, and he found the lead actor. So he was a producer for that. He helped with locations, just quite a lot of things. And then we did a short film together that he was the lead in. And we're working on, oh, it was in my second feature, in correctional. He had a small part in that. And we're working on a kind of short, I guess essay kind of thing about his life and his thoughts on Syria, where he's from, and stuff like that. But yeah, we're close. He's a good friend, and he's very smart and talented.
Now, you didn't change the names from the actors. Why did you keep, the character names as Dale and Mohammad for your short film?
I was lazy, I guess. I mean, it just kind of, it doesn't really come up in the story so much. So I guess it really wasn't on our mind. And since they were putting so much of their own selves into it, especially Dale, it just kind of seemed like, let's just leave it. And I don't know, I guess it kind of felt like I didn't want to confuse anybody. And that might just be a personal thing where it's like a lot of the films I do end up being this kind of fiction, nonfiction thing where people, usually, some sort of non-actor or whatever, they bring a lot of their own life and stuff to the project. And there's something we're working on now where like only one of the people has a different name. And like, it's hard. Like we can't keep it straight. It's just like, oh, he's my friend Rich, but the character name is Carl. And it's just like, I don't know. It's like, why don't we just streamline it, for these kind of particular projects?
Absolutely. You're right. The film didn't really mention their names, but it works. So could you tell me about the title Trammel? Where did that came from?
Mm-hmm. I wanted something that would be kind of, I mean, look, I should have looked up on IMDb how many movies were named with the same title, but I didn't, because I saw the word and it was just like, that's kind of a striking, interesting word. I don't really see it. So it'd be a cool title for a movie. I was not the first to think that. What can you do? But Trammel is to impede someone or something, to trap them. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it wasn't a super obvious thing to say about the film, but I saw Dale as like very isolated, very alone in this kind of like crumbling world we live in, especially now, where even more is getting stripped away. And it's like, you can infer that he can't really go anywhere else, but that he doesn't really have anything there. So in many ways, he's trapped. He is spilling his guts out. He's talking so much and he's saying so much and it's very personal. Is he trapped by these things? And you can kind of just keep going down that of all these like different things in the film where it's like, oh, these people are trapped, they're being impeded. Even with Mohammad and his disappearance, where it's just like, why did he disappear? And it's like, tried to push it in the film. There was not just that it was like very hurtful to Dale because he had this bond with him, he was a friend, but it's also just like, there's something else maybe going on, like what happened and we don't know. So there's like a big negative feeling. So what does that mean? Is he gone? Like, did he die? Whatever. You have this kind of discomfort. So is he impeded? Like, is he trapped somewhere? Is his life on hold? Was his life like stopped? Not necessarily literally, but I saw that it was basically like, okay, well, you can connect a bunch of that to the title. And hopefully it kind of stands out as a word. People are like, I don't know, are people just like, I don't know what that word is, let me watch it, We'll see, I guess.
Now, I was actually fascinated what happened immediately after the discovery of Muhammad's disappearance, where Dale just picked up a package off a shelf and starts reading it. Was that a random package he picked up, or was there something specific that Dale actually did?
I think that was random. I think it was just like, you know, uh, go like wander off a little bit, pick up a box and start reading the ingredients, which is like plenty for me. It's just like, that's weird. It shows you're kind of like, like you just been knocked out, you punch, you're like dizzy, you're like flailing. And they're like, what is he doing? Is he like trying to jumpstart another conversation with the other employee there? Is he just like literally like grasping at straws? And it's one of those things where it's just like I was 10 years ago, something like that, probably longer, I became vegan. And that's when I really started to look at like ingredients, in everything. The only time I ever did that, I was like such a terrible eater, everything, didn't care. And then I started to really pay attention. So it's just like, I basically knew like from that point on that if you picked up any box like over there, like you're going to start being like xanthan gum, and like just a very weird thing to say out loud, let alone read to yourself. So it was that. And it's just like, Dale seems like the kind of guy who would just be like, like, what is that? Like something to relate, a very like dumb and weird thing to relate to like pretty much anybody about. But it's just like, what happens when like nobody's taking the bite and he can't then like jump off and start, his next monologue or something like that. So yes, it could be anything. And I don't even know what he chose now, but yeah, I just kind of let him loose.
You certainly did. Now, obviously, this takes place in a nondescript small town. Could you tell us about this nondescript small town? Because it was just 3 locations: outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
in the store, and at a restaurant, which
Right.
could be anywhere in America for all we're concerned.
Mm-hmm. I guess to really go back, I lived in Brooklyn for a really long time, and I just never was inspired to shoot in the city. And I did, and I found like stuff, but I was always drawn to kind of like suburban or rural. I think there's a lot there that's kind of works with whatever idea, kind of brings out like a lot of things when you shoot there. So it was always going to be like, a place in a suburban area, a place in or a place in a rural area. And I think in cities, there's like definitely a lot more community places. So like the idea, probably wouldn't even work there. But this place in particular is Averill Park, New York, which is near Troy, New York. And it's just a very, post-industrial, depressed kind of area, which is also, there's people who live there and it's very like quaint and cute. But yeah, it's pretty isolating. And it just had a lot of it had a good fitting energy for it. And I really liked, in particular, that pharmacy because it felt like something from, a different era or like a couple different eras smashed together, kind of like the last dying breath of that kind of small town vibe. Nobody's there, but like this is like still going on.
Yeah, I think it all connected very well. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you, Christopher. What actually gave you at which part of your life you knew that you wanted to become a filmmaker?
When I was 7, I really I wanted a camera. And back then now I know there are a lot of different kinds of cameras, but back then all I saw was the VHS camera. that my uncle had. And I never mustered up the courage to ask him to borrow it because I feel like it was going to be no. But I remember coming up with sketches and stuff in my head that I really wanted to do. Like my one cousin would cry a lot, like all the time, and I thought about doing a like a wilderness documentary, like talking to the camera, and it's like, oh, like here's the wild beast or whatever, and you know, it was like so good in my head, and it's just like I never let that go. So when digital consumer stuff started to become a little bit more affordable, I started shooting sketches with my friends. Um, and from that point, I realized it was something that I actually wanted to learn how to do because we were editing in camera. I had no idea how to get whatever it is like in this camera then onto this computer. Had no idea. Like back then, it's just like you needed to buy hardware in order to connect the camera. Like it wasn't like a USB kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was just like, we were editing in camera and it was terrible. But I was like, I would like to learn how to do this. So that's what I chose to do, which is good because I guess if I, you know, had my mind that I have now back then, I probably would have went to go study for other things. But at that point, like I had no idea, you know, it's like, you know, thankfully I knew that I wanted to learn how to do that. Cause I don't know what I would have chose, but, anyway, yeah, started very, very early. I'm not really sure why it was that medium, of film. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was like something cheaper, you know, that you didn't need to spend a ton of money on. Because I was always writing stories, and I think for a time I did want to make video games, um, but movies won out in the end. Um, but yeah, I was always kind of like writing something or the typical thing of like you have all of your toys and you make up stories. Movies went out. I don't know why, but yeah, something drew me to that, and it just kind of kept going.
Wow, it brought you here. So, what kind of storyteller do you think you are, and what do you aspire to become?
Mm-hmm. Um, it's that's a tough question because I see myself as hmm, it's hard. I guess I've always done some sort of, or I've done it a lot, a blending of fiction and nonfiction. Um, but I would like to do, like, I wouldn't mind doing more genre-oriented stuff. Um, but I guess if ever I do something, I would want it to have some kind of bigger idea to kind of latch onto, kind of a macro idea. And I would like that to be the case. And I believe it is the case for things I've done in the past. And I would also like to, as best as I can, do things a little differently, experiment in different ways. I get very bored very easily watching things. So I like to kind of think, well, how can I express this idea with the other elements in filmmaking as opposed to just, you know, saying, putting in dialogue or something like that. I like that very much. I like problem solving to kind of figure that out. Like you hit the inspiration to find that. And I do like the idea that in some way, when you do that with your movies, that you are encouraging people to think differently about something, even if it causes some alienation in the viewer. You're encouraging them to uh, you know, take a different approach or something like that. Although, you know, it's can be slight. But I think it's kind of meaningful to do. I find meaning in doing that. You know, whether I'm successful at that or not is not really up to me, but it is something I like to practice. So I'd like to continue doing that. And I do think like no matter what I do, if it's like, I guess, a genre or like more fictionalized than not, there's always going to be an element of nonfiction.
Yeah.
If I would love to work with, I guess, John Cusack one day.
Yeah.
And I believe that if we do something, I would like him to bring that, which would be inevitable. The fact that he is John Cusack, the fact that he was in, you know, all of these like different kinds of movies, what we think of him, you know, when we see him. I think that kind of element, no matter what I do, is always going to be in the film. I just kind of can't help it. I mean, we'll see. John, if you're watching, hit me up.
All right. Well, Christopher, let me wrap it up with one simple question, because obviously we are communicating, you know, via Zoom because of crazy times like this, and Slamdance is virtual. How are you staying sane and creative during times like this?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah, I was supposed to shoot a feature last year, and we did not do that. And, you know, during this time, it's like people are getting sick, they're losing their jobs, and you're just like, what's the point of all this? So it was very sad, but I was very heartened that I saw a lot of mutual aid networks pop up. And where I live, there was one that popped up. So my wife and I started working with them. And I was taking charge of their mask project to make, we were undocumented workers were making masks and we were selling them. The money was going to them. And for every mask they made, they would give it to frontline workers. And we were helping with like grocery deliveries and stuff like that. That was really great. And it was really great to see that kind of come up and that people were getting involved and that we were too. So that made me feel a bit better about everything. And it's inspiring. And you like how that inspiration takes shape, you know, I guess it could feed in creatively. And I don't know, I guess it put me in a little better spirits and I started really thinking outside the box again. And I did manage to find something to shoot with actually Dale, and the DP of Trammel is also DPing this. He's co-directing. So we're working on a feature and we're like almost done.
Oh.
So yeah, I don't know. I did fall into despair and pessimism, but you know, started working in the community when we could and started thinking more, and like we found all of these things. So yeah, I mean, it's easier to say like stay positive and stuff like that, but I don't know. These things are out there, and when you're ready, you know, you can see them and think about them, and it'll give you a little charge. Don't give up, you know.
Excellent. And virtually, when can people see your Slamdance short film starting when? Do you know?
I think everything goes on February 12th. So the 12th to the 25th, I think you could see everything. Hope so.
Well, excellent. Well, hey, once again, Christopher, congratulations for Trammel and
Thank you.
for Slamdance. And thank you for speaking with me about your short film. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you. Next time, Christopher.
Next time.